All right. Thanks for joining us today, everybody. We are continuing our in-depth conversation around metacognition, the kind of analyzing of your thoughts, the managing what you monitor, and the importance of that concept, and taking it to kind of to the next level about challenging your personal presuppositions or worldviews, along with other people's worldviews or presuppositions, and the importance of doing that. So we're going to kind of touch on the definitions briefly as we go along, and then get into maybe some specific examples of what that looks like. So with that, I'll bring in Dr. Hall. Dr. Hall is a business psychologist, a executive coach, a multi-time author and public speaker. And what we like to get into on this podcast are the specific details, the in practice, day to day. How do we actually implement the things that we talk about in our coaching, in our mentoring, in his books, in his courseware? So with that, I'll bring Dr. Hall in. How you doing today, Dr. Hall?
I'm doing quite well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I when I brought up the subject, you go, "Boy, we're going deep today."
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Well, because we're going deep, I do want to kind of revisit the definitions a little bit of metacognition and
Sure.
presuppositions again, for those that haven't seen prior episodes, or really didn't quite get the full gist of it. So let me do some real quick housekeeping, and then we can kind of get into the details.
You bet.
For those of you that I haven't met, my name is Jerod Lee. I'm the associate broker and team lead here at My Home Connection, also known as MHC Realty. Our sponsor for today is the perfect real estate business. We've spent over 2 decades developing tools, skills, programs in order to better your real estate game and kind of level up. We're mainly focused on the mind, but also can appreciate the other things that you need, the other aspects of what you would need in your real estate business. So we'd love to have a no obligation, conversation, consultation about how it is that we can help. But other than that, let's get into the topic for today, and that is, I guess, the reason I thought this would be a good conversation, certainly from our prior follow up, but I've really noticed in some occasions where I felt kind of necessary to challenge people's presuppositions, and they're just fixed. I mean, so if you could tell the audience kind of what those are, and then we can talk about metacognition, but why are they so dead set on keeping the way that they look at the world as fixed as they possibly can?
Well, it's a survival strategy.
At the end of the
That,
day, that's what it is.
that's essentially what it is. That if we constantly had to change our beliefs every day, like, oh, the sun comes up in the west, oh, and it goes down in the east. Oh, okay, yeah, sure, I can live with that. No, 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 no. I mean, what 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 our habits, what our traditions, what our basic worldview does is it gives us a ground that we can always return to. And to change those beliefs are very difficult, primarily because most people never question their worldview. They never question their presupposition. It's just there. And until you examine what you believe, distinguish it from what other people believe at a basic level, you can't ever question it. It's just, it's like air. It's the air that we move in that you and I don't notice air. We notice wind, but when there's no wind, we don't notice that we're surrounded by this substance, and it keeps us alive and we move in it. It's just there.
So to relate it to kind of our context of real estate, could it be your foundation? And if you begin to question your worldviews, your foundation, appears to be shaking, and it's an uncomfortable place to be.
Well, it's not just uncomfortable. It's vertigo inducing.
Mm,
That if you can't trust what you've always believed, what can you trust? If down
mm.
is up and up is down, what are you supposed to believe? And that is a terrifying position to be in if you don't know basic things. And so when you ask people to question those, it can be a real threat to not just their identity, but their whole sense of not just their own identity, but their understanding of the entire world. And that's why you see people, when they're able to start looking at their worldview and they're able to start questioning it, you can see some very profound changes. But and we can go into this point later in more detail, but you persuading another person by logic in a conversation to change their worldview, that's not going to happen.
It would have to be almost be emotional, right? Wouldn't it? That be the preferred approach if you really want to challenge a worldview?
Well,
Is more
it would absolutely include the emotions, but what you'll probably see is that it involves a long period of time where outside there are regular messages about the new worldview, the new way of thinking. And frankly, people will look around to other people and say, "Oh, what do you believe? Oh, you believe that new thing? Oh, okay, I guess that's okay." And so they'll look for evidence outside themselves, mostly what are other people doing, and they'll very often adopt what other people are doing. And an important part of changing your worldview is self-persuasion. It's not that I'm going to persuade you. It's that I'm going to put an idea in your head. It's going to bounce around, and it's got to have an emotional component so that it makes you feel differently, primarily in a way that is going to feel better. And then you spend the time rehearsing this new belief and self-persuading. That's really how most persuasion happens.
so. In my growth process, it seems like, and I don't know if I'm using the right comparison or analogy, but um, in order to like, what do they call it? Limiting beliefs.
Mhm.
If you have certain worldviews you will not change, aren't those somewhat mapped to a limiting self-belief because there's things you just don't think are possible? Are they often connected?
Yes. So a limiting belief would be less central to your identity, but a worldview or a presupposition can limit the ways that you'll believe, therefore, can limit you. Yes.
Okay. So I guess where I was going with that is if they are connected and it is limiting you, as a good leader, somebody that wants to grow, shouldn't you be committed to the process of ongoing challenging of your own presuppositions?
Yeah. Yeah. I think great leaders, but that's the important point is challenging our own rather
Right.
than challenging others. And so when new evidence comes along, how do you integrate it in what you already believe? Does it completely upend your entire belief system? If it does, that's a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, let's bring it home here to the real estate context, the space we talk in. And we don't necessarily need to answer the question here, but just kind of over the rest of the conversation is one of the big presuppositions that I see. So just so folks know, like this is the way you look at things. This is the foundation you've established in your mind. So when you look at things, these are the filters that you use to walk the earth and do things on a day-to-day basis, right? That's worldview slash presupposition.
Yeah.
The 0809 meltdown was about 15 plus years ago.
Yep.
And now we have home buyers. The average age of first-time home buyers is now close to 40.
Yep.
So I guess where I'm going with this is in our space, you have people that were probably financially devastated, whether it was their household with their parents at an
Yep.
older age or themselves out in their own career. But there could be this worldview of owning only begets trauma. Uh, you know, if you lost a house or your family lost a house and then you had to everything was upended and your finances collapsed, your credit was toast. That's a and now how do you challenge that, because that was a unique time in history.
Well, I mean, I think you challenge it with love and gentleness because because pointing at somebody and saying you're stupid for believing that's wrong.
Right.
They're only going to think, okay, now I just feel more embarrassed. I feel worse. I'm not gonna listen to this guy.
Yeah.
And so part of helping influence people is join them where they are. That's part of the leadership. The leadership task is to join people emotionally where they are and then help to draw them to a new position. And so some of it will be facts, some of it will be asking them to look around for other evidence so that they can begin to self-persuade.
Hmm.
And some beliefs are just so I don't want to say comfortable. That's not quite the right. They're just so familiar. That's probably the
Hmm.
better word, that people don't want to give them up.
Yeah.
It,
Why would I put myself in an uncomfortable situation? Because we don't naturally like to be uncomfortable. Like, I want to go back to
right. We
my,
we don't. We don't.
yeah,
And it's risky, right?
yeah,
This belief has protected me. This belief, this worldview, this presupposition has served me well. Why would I want to give this up?
yeah.
Well, I don't want you to give it up unless there's better evidence that will help you feel better. And even then, it will take a long time of self-persuasion and lots of both logical evidence, but also emotional evidence.
Yeah. Well, let's keep this kind of example or scenario in the back of our mind as we're talking. But
Sure.
I'm also thinking about the folks that have presuppositions about why I potentially can't achieve the success in life that I would desire, and some underlying presuppositions that you just need to shake. I'm not good enough because, right? I'm not privileged. I didn't come from money. I'm a female. Insert. I hate to say excuse
Insert
here.
whatever thing. I'm not lucky.
Right.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you have that and you don't analyze if you have it, how do you get over it? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
this is
well, you,
the
you can't. Yeah, the fish doesn't know it's wet. We don't know that we're surrounded with air.
yeah.
Until you're aware that these things exist, you can't start to question them. And part of what a leader does is ask questions to get people to start thinking, rather than being hell bent on getting the person to a changed point of view. It's introducing the changed point of view and watching it percolate.
Yeah.
It took a long time for this person to get this presupposition in their mind. They're not going to get rid of it in a week. They're not going to have a sudden conversion.
Right. Right.
Whatever sudden conversion they have is going to be the product of lots and lots of things leading up to the avalanche.
So a good leader, from what I'm hearing, would identify the people that are probably in a humble enough state, that are open-minded to questioning some of their presuppositions, following a leader that they respect and trust to help them. And that, by the way, like you said, it's not just that person helping them get past it. It's the seed that was planted, and maybe the stability of helping them walk through it.
Yeah, and again, I think the other side of this is the people who change their mind every 15 minutes.
Right.
They have no grounded sense, and if they're able to be persuaded to change fundamental things about their lives every 15 minutes, they're going to be unstable all the way.
Yeah.
So I think as a leader, you're looking for people who are not super easy to change, but you're patient enough to help them start to see, boy, things could be a little bit different if you believed something different. What is
Yeah.
it that you actually believe?
Yeah.
And boy, that belief might be getting in your way. Does it serve you well? And do you
Right.
want to keep it?
Right. No, I love it. So I think this is a good segue into the metacognition, right? We've talked
Mm-hmm.
about challenging your presuppositions and how do you do that, right? And we've talked in past episodes about metacognition being, thinking about your thoughts, being aware of what goes through your head. And can you give a little more specifics and definition to the
Yeah. So
metacognition?
cognition, yeah, cognition is thinking. Meta means above thinking.
Mhm.
So the shorthand, it's thinking about your thinking. It's self-awareness. It Every one of us has a stream of consciousness running through our head. Most people don't ever sample what's in that stream of consciousness. It just goes. And when they hear how other people talk to themselves, they think, you believe that? Wow, I don't think that way at all. And one of the intoxicating experiences about falling in love is you start to tell someone else for the first time in your life what your stream of consciousness looks like. And it's intoxicating to find that thing about another person, to learn about it. And it's part of the attraction process to find out, boy, how we're the same, how we're different.
So I love your what's the word? You describe taking a ladle and dipping it into your stream of consciousness, like an every hour on the hour for a while, and kind
Yeah.
of piecing together, hey, this is what I think, and I like that. And the visual that I have is your stream of consciousness is in base tied together with your worldviews or your presuppositions. So it's
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
kind of, this stream that you're taking chunks out of, and now you're trying to break all that down and really analyze what's in there. And I know we're getting pretty deep, but I think it's important because, as we talked about, your mindset's either going to move you forward or potentially move you backward.
Right.
But for most people, it's just keeping them on cruise control, which isn't usually helpful.
No, actually, it's very helpful to be on cruise control.
Well, I mean, helpful in forwarding your
Oh, not
progress.
for improvement, but
Right.
for self-preservation, it's great.
Okay.
For
Thank you.
for for energy conservation, it's fantastic. For not taxing yourself too much, it's great. Lots and lots of people go there because it's easy to do.
Gotcha.
If you want to be a leader, it means doing things differently than everyone else, which means that you're going to question these things. You're not going to be comfortable with the status quo. You are going to push yourself.
And I think as our listeners are hearing us talk, the likelihood that you're listening to this conversation, this podcast, is probably you're a person inclined to figure out how to self improve or to become a
Well,
better leader.
yeah, I mean, people who are drawn to this sort of content are likely to be self-improving. The person sitting next to them is going to be saying things like, boy, those guys are full of it. I mean, this is the stupidest stuff I've ever heard. Like, why
Yeah.
would you want to do that?
Right. Right. Yeah. Everything's fine. Just leave it alone.
Leave it alone. Don't pick a scab. Right.
Right.
You know, I knew a guy once. He kept saying, "I'm just fat, dumb, and happy," and he was neither fat nor dumb nor happy. But but that was his phrase. I'm fat, dumb, and happy. And what it meant is I take no effort. Physically, I take no effort intellectually, and nothing's ever hard. So happy, I wouldn't use the same word. He's complacent.
Yeah.
Fat, dumb, and complacent.
Yeah. Not. Yeah. And that's, I think, the factual or the accurate word, complacent, which is not. What's the other word I'm looking?
Contentment. It's
Contentment.
not contentment.
Right. Yeah.
No,
Two
it's not.
different
Two
things.
very different things.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're not looking to forward your mindset, your life, your anyway.
Yeah, those people, unless they're dragged by their ear by a loved one, are not watching us or listening to us.
Right. Yep. Okay. So kudos to you for listening, because obviously you have an interest in that. So we're really again, again, the neuro nerd. I kind of feel strange introducing that aspect sometimes, but this is what we're getting to: is how do we drill down I've been to a lot of the motivational speeches and heard the keynotes and blah, blah, blah. And, they talk about a lot of stuff generally, but seldom do I hear, you know, how do I make the rubber meet the road? And this is what we're talking about. This is how people acquire their mindset and how they analyze who they are, what they're about, what direction they're going
Sure.
in, what their goals and objectives are, and how they're going to get there. And it all starts here. So just to revisit metacognition. So we don't manage what we don't monitor. So
Right.
we're gonna monitor what our brain is doing, and then we're gonna
Yep.
manage it. We're gonna
Yep.
hopefully point it in the right direction. And in large part, we're going to do that by challenging our worldviews, what that
Well,
filter is.
that's more of an advanced skill. It starts by beginning to question, beginning to question what you believe. And getting to your worldview is really below your beliefs. Your beliefs you know about. Your beliefs you can say I like ice cream. That's a belief. It's pretty easy. An attitude is a little fuzzier,
Okay.
and it's a little bit more emotional, but it's disconnected with evidence, or disconnected from evidence. You just have an idea about something,
Gotcha.
and you don't really have a reason for it. You just are pretty sure it's true.
You probably couldn't debate about it, but you feel strongly, or
Yes,
yeah.
that's a great way of putting it, Jerod. You can't debate about it, but you certainly feel strongly. And beneath all that is your set of presuppositions. So it takes a while to get there. And what I encourage people to look at as they start scratching around to find out what their presuppositions, their worldview is start to look at the aphorisms or the mantras that people in your family said that stick in your mind. The kinds of little phrases that stick it in your mind over and over and over again. They typically are, very often they rhyme.
Yeah.
Very often they have a little tune to them, but they're stuck deeply in your head, and they're very hard to get rid of.
Well, they're little cheat codes that give you the shortcut to say, when this comes up, this is what I
Yeah.
think of, and it makes it simple to make a decision.
Yes. Yes. There's an old poem by Rudyard Kipling, and it's called "The Gods of the Copybook Headings."
Huh.
I don't know if you've ever heard of it,
No, I haven't.
but in old English, in the old English educational system, they would have things called copybooks, and so they're essentially your workbook that you'd work in, and so you'd write out your lessons in these copybooks. Well, the headings of the copybooks were famous quotes,
Okay.
or aphorisms, or statements.
Gotcha.
And so every time the child is doing their homework, they're reading the copybook heading. And that was a way that in the English educational system, they would inculcate values. They would inculcate ideas.
Interesting.
And he calls them the gods of the copybook headings, that these aphorisms, these truisms were for centuries the things that held the British Empire together.
Yeah.
And when those are gone, there's hell to pay, essentially.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. So we understand what presuppositions are. We understand how to challenge those through metacognition. And again, I'm saying all these loosely, right? Because this is
Sure.
deep stuff. But the one thing that I do want to touch on is the assumptions that we make, and the importance of challenging, which we already kind of touched on. But then also understanding that we can make assumptions about other people's worldviews and can quite easily or even often be totally off base, which can really negatively potentially impact a relationship. So
Yes.
get good at knowing your presuppositions such that you can better analyze your teams or your clients' presuppositions, so that you don't just, because if you make an assumption and you're wrong, it's hard, sometimes it's impossible to backpedal.
You'll be talking past each other because your definitions of words are dependent on your basic presuppositions. And so I would say not all assumptions are bad, but if they are inaccurate, especially about other people, assumptions can be disastrous.
Yeah. As I've uh, fine-tuned metacognition, realizing how I think, I've realized how easily my mind can make shortcuts and use shortcuts. And I've been trying to give myself more data points to come to a conclusion, as opposed to just jumping to one. Go, okay, I think they might be thinking this, but I need a couple more pieces of information before I really conclude that.
Right, right. So your 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 assumption could be accurate, and as you say, that's a cheat code. That's a shortcut that helps you get along in the world more quickly. But every shortcut, it's called a judgmental heuristic. Every mental shortcut is has got some weaknesses, some ways that it can break. And what you're saying is, okay, I'm going to enjoy the shortcut, but I'm going to slow it down just a little bit.
Thank you. Yep.
And I'm going to check a few more things before I jump ahead.
Yeah.
And one of the things I keep learning is I think I know, but then I'll ask a question. It's like, okay, I think I know what you mean.
Yep.
I think I do.
Yep.
But can you define this term?
Yeah.
Or could you tell me a little bit more about that thing? Because I want to make sure I understand you. People love that.
Yeah, because you're listening and you care.
Exactly. And if you assume incorrectly, they feel misunderstood, they feel uncared for. So if you say, listen, I want to make sure I get this right, it slows things down a little bit, but it increases accuracy and it increases understanding and affection if you do all those things.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and people deserve to have that extra little bit of, prompting to say this. Let me make sure, especially when we're doing something like helping somebody buy or sell a home, right? This is a big undertaking, and to mess things up and miss things, it could get catastrophic quickly. If you're rushing and making bad assumptions. Anyway, so I think it took a long time to set a stage. Let me go back to here. So, and I actually, okay, so I think we've already touched on some of these. Why should you challenge your worldviews? Because they might not be wrong, but they're probably could be better.
Well, they may not be wrong, but by challenging them, you know that you believe differently. Your assumptions about the world are different than other people's. And so you're able then to realize, oh, I can't just assume this thing about this other person. We're using the same language, but I think we mean different things.
Yeah.
I mean, this just happened at lunch today with somebody. He used a word. I thought I knew what it meant. I listened to him some more. Then it was clear. No, we don't mean the same things. Okay, that's cool. I didn't need to arm wrestle him about it. We just,
need to get on the same page. Yeah, and his definition of the word, it might not have been accurate as per like Wikipedia or whatever.
But I'm not sure it really mattered. It
Right.
just mattered that his and mine were different.
Right.
And in order for us to gain greater understanding together, I had to understand what he meant. I don't need to debate him and show him in Wikipedia how he's wrong. That's not useful.
Right. I just need to know that what you're thinking of the word is I'm in line with that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we're drilling down. How do we exactly begin to challenge our presuppositions? I know we've talked about that constant analyzing of our thoughts.
Yep.
What's the healthiest way for us to determine if we should spend time analyzing something and then how to pursue that? Like, I don't want to analyze everything in my life all the time.
You'd be exhausted. I mean, right. it would be probably a physical impossibility. You'd be so bogged down, you couldn't even get out of bed.
Right.
I would say the way we challenge our own worldview is to spend time with people who are different from us. with whom you have respect, affection, and trust, and hammer out some ideas. Talk about these different things, and you can go, oh boy, I've never thought about it that way. And understanding other people's perspectives will help you understand your own perspective.
Yeah.
I would say, if you have the opportunity, live in another country, because they got really different assumptions.
Yeah.
Or even in the United States, live in a very different region of the country. And you'll realize, a lot of the things I took for granted, they're not the same here.
Yeah, I watched a quick video in the last couple of days here about their thoughts on 12 nations within the United States, kind of different cultures, different, age groups, and, their how they look at finances and their work ethic and blah, blah, blah. So he basically said, the United States has kind of, if you, depending, this was his interpretation, that there's kind of 12 significant nations within the United States that are, if you dig into them, pretty different. So go to someplace different in the United States.
We could say they're just subcultures of the same
Yeah.
basic American experience. There are some things that tie us together. But yeah, I mean, if you look at somebody who's living in Miami and compare them to somebody who's living in Maine, those are really different worlds.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking like Hawaii was kind of the smallest of those cultures because it was the most different and didn't map to anything else. So somebody from Hawaii versus the Northeast, like, oh man.
Yeah. Geographically isolated. Yeah.
Yeah.
In Hawaii. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you're not spending all day, every day doing this, but you're, as a good leader, you're looking for opportunities to spend time in discussion with people that probably are from a different culture or have likely different perspectives on life, and just have conversations and see what makes sense to challenge. And
well, a challenge of your own. Again,
yes, correct.
The temptation we all have is to challenge the other people, but to start to at least just start to ask yourself, is this an accurate belief? And some of them are very particular to us, what we believe about ourselves, which comes from our life experience. And sometimes, it's helpful to talk to other people who have different life experiences, even if they're in the same culture as us.
Well, and the beauty of challenging your own presuppositions are, you see the things that worked for you. Kind of what you said earlier. If somebody that you trusted said it lovingly, like, that is easier for me to challenge and process and spend time in, other than somebody I don't even like that said it in a mean way. Like, that's a tough pill to swallow. So I think if you're going to be that leader, and if you do have to challenge somebody's worldviews, as in the case we just described, hey, you're going to buy some real estate, but your perception is that we're going to have, not a mortgage meltdown, but some variation of that, because that's what happened in 2008. But that, something catastrophic is going to hit you, and now, the next decade is just power through time like that. And that's a unique point in time that not everybody experiences. So you kind of got to help challenge them on that a little bit to help them.
Well, I mean, you start to ask them, tell me what your experience in 08, 09 was like. And as a result, what do you think about real estate? What do you think about buying a house? And what do you think about going into debt? And how, and you'll start to get maybe not what would seem like logical statements, but really strong emotional statements. Like, I'm terrified of this, or I just don't believe it's going to work. Okay, those are really powerful assumptions about how housing works. Or the one I hear, especially among young people, which is really kind of heartbreaking for me, is, I'll never own my own home.
Mm.
Wow. I mean, because you're assuming in your 30s that the rest of your life is going to be just like it is now. Well, I mean, I lived through my 30s, and my life is really different now.
Right.
And so you're assuming that nothing will ever change. And that's an assumption,
Yeah.
is that my life experience now will always be this way going forward in time, and nothing will change. Well, that's an assumption. Is it accurate?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess, we just have to figure out who's open to it and who's not. You do your initial intake and consultation with your client, your prospective
Mm-hmm.
client. You have these conversations, and I think you're just really going to have to determine if you, I mean, I hate to say it, but you're kind of going to have to conclude if their presupposition isn't something you're going to overcome, that they're always going to think that this is a bad idea.
Then
And
they may then home ownership may not be the thing for that person.
yeah,
And is it really your job to convince them to do something that is terrifying for them? That's probably not what you're going to get accomplished in, the 6 to 8 weeks it takes to find and buy a home.
yeah,
That's likely not to change that quickly. So ask yourself, is this a job that's suitable for me?
right, right, yeah. Yeah, you don't want to strong arm somebody into doing something they just don't feel good about doing. But if there's a glimmer of hope that you could plant the seed, that was kind of a unique circumstance in time, that things have changed, the lenders don't lend to everybody like they used to, that systems and policies have been put in place, and that if you're, approved by a lender to buy, then you're pretty darn approved and you're a legitimate buyer because they're not just giving money to anybody because they don't want your
Right.
house back. Um, doesn't mean things couldn't get rough at some point, but so could
Well,
being a renter.
but again, there's an assumption. Things will always get rough for a time.
Mm,
The question is, will things be rough always?
right.
Will it be insurmountable? Those are the sorts of questions to start getting at.
Yeah.
And the other thing I guess I wanted to clarify is I probably painted too neat of a picture of human beings, that we're really clear and we're really consistent. Human beings are incredibly inconsistent, me included. I mean, I am a human. I am inconsistent. So I think it's important to realize that people have mixed assumptions about the world. They because they haven't spent a long time clarifying their worldview or their presuppositions, they hold contradictory ideas. And so it's important to recognize, okay, it's okay for them to be mixed up about it because they haven't really spent any time sifting and sorting this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say for those of you that haven't listened to our Resident Leader podcasts episodes in the past, I think what comes into play here is the being able to kind of set your thoughts and emotions aside to really analyze your prospect, your lead, your client, such that you're looking at facial expressions, you're listening to tone, you're watching mannerisms to get the level of, I guess, commitment. I hate to say commitment to the presupposition, but some this is for the most part what I think, and then there's people that are like, yeah, this is absolutely what I think, and you're never going to change that. And if to your point, they might not be able to put it into words, but I think if you're paying enough attention, you can get a pretty good idea, just visually and
Yeah.
hearing correctly.
I think your final question on this slide is how to best communicate with people with different worldviews. I think it's with respect, with some curiosity, and even if you come to the point of understanding their worldview, that's not the same as agreeing with their worldview.
Right. Right.
So if I believe, I got snakes in my head, and you come to understand that I really believe I have snakes in my head, you could say, boy, that's really terrifying. I mean, that would be a really distressing thing. You don't have to believe that I have snakes in my head.
Right.
You can believe I'm wrong about that.
Right.
But understanding is not the same as agreeing.
Yeah.
And understanding is not the same as reality.
Right. Right. Yep. Yeah, love it. Well, I think we've gone really deep, and there's a lot to think about and digest for folks here. So this might be a listen to it twice episode. 'Cause, um, but hopefully, if you just came across this episode and you're just like, wow, that was a lot, look into our library, because we've talked about these ideas and concepts before, and we expound upon them in their own episodes. So I'm sure we have one on metacognition by itself and
Yep.
worldviews by itself, but now we're kind of putting them together and really trying to you know, uh, level up in these skills.
And Jerod, for the people who are not familiar with our content, when I work with people's presuppositions, their worldview, that is some of the most difficult work that I do with people. And not that it's unpleasant, but it really is effortful on their part.
Yeah, well, I would think one of the most rewarding too, because you have some breakthroughs that are just profound, right? Your mind
They
just
really
opens
can
up.
they really can be profound when people spend enough time in it and are open to challenging themselves when for whatever reason the evidence doesn't stack up anymore and they can change one belief, everything else will change. And I won't tell you the belief, but I held a belief, probably a basic presupposition about the world, probably until uh, probably my late 20s, early 30s. And over a course of about 3 or 4 years, that belief shifted. And when that belief, that assumption about the world shifted,
Hmm.
boom, 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 all these other things that were consequent to that
Yeah.
all changed. And my
Wow.
life took a different direction,
Yeah.
fundamentally different direction.
Yeah. Yeah. That's powerful. That's powerful. I love it, because I've had those too. I'm like, wow, I did think that, and be humble and realize that I can be wrong, because on the opposite side of that is pursuing the truth and making
Yeah.
progress.
Yeah. And we'll close with this, that when I was a freshman in college, um, the person who has become my best friend, he and I were roommates. We met the first day of college. We became friends, really, I'd say best friends that year. But we disagreed on everything
Mm.
because my presuppositions about the world were different than his.
Hmm.
And um, we're still friends. What happened is that not in the year that I lived with him, and then we lived together 2 years later, and not in that year, it didn't happen. It was probably 8 or 9 years later that my worldview began to shift and change. But
Wow.
he was not so interested in beating me over the head,
Hmm.
that when my mind changed, it changed to be more in line with his thinking.
Uh-huh.
Um, and we're still friends, but it takes a special person to appreciate and care about someone, even though you disagree about very important things.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. I love it. Well, we should have more relationships that we can feel comfortable, that we're safe, and that we can have conversations. We don't always have to agree on everything, but reflect on what the other person says, and look for truth in that, because it might not be totally true, but there might be aspects that are helpful. And anyway,
Yep.
there's a lot to it. So I agree with you. Let's land the plane and make sure everybody knows how to get in touch with you and where your resources are.
Yeah, probably the best way is to reach me on my website, drrogerhall.com, drrogerhall.com. On it, you can find ways to get in touch with me, to learn more about my peak performance consultation. You can find out about my books, DIY Brain, Staying Happy, Being Productive, and Expedition. And you can find out about my online courses.
Yeah, you got a quiz for those, at least one now, right? With another upcoming.
What? Well, yeah. There's actually two quizzes right there: the Worryometer and the
Hmm.
Freakout quiz, which are two different quizzes. It'll take you to the same endpoint, but there'll be other opportunities like that in the future.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Dr. Hall, for your insight into all this and practical application. I hope there's some valuable stuff that people can can take away. And again, we'd love to help if we can. So feel free to reach out. I'll wish everybody a
Thanks for
blessed
having
one.
me.
Take care. Yeah.